So Dungeon Masters, here's a fantastic villain idea to make your players more invested. My tip here is have players make them. When you make something yourself, you actually perceive it to be better than it is compared to somebody else who sees it. This is known as something called the IKEA bias. So having your players invested in world building will actually make them more invested in the actual game they're playing. So one time I did this homebrew adventure thing, and I got players to make villains for a one-shot. Now players knew it was an evil game. It wasn't very PvP because they were given one simple goal. No matter what happens, just try to escape. Now the task is quite simple. I created a situation where these guards had a greater threat in the world that their military couldn't manage. So the warden took a huge risk at the jail and actually asked the players to help them while still being prisoners. So these villains my players made waited for the perfect moment to escape. It's basically when a fight broke out between aliens and mind flayers and the like. And this is a good way to avoid player versus player or PvP because it didn't really benefit the villains to fight each other because they were simply just wanting to get away. The outcome of this was amazing. The villains after the one-shot were a major threat in the campaign that followed. And like every single player wanted to see their villain in action that they created. They wondered what they were up to, how powerful they became, etc. So we had 4 villains. We had Darius, a mastermind spellcaster. He was poised to become an arcane tech faction leader in the campaign. And he was like basically poisoning the current leader and gathering powerful artifacts. Another villain was a treasure hunter named Trell. They were a greedy treasure hunter that ended up looting a pyramid. They were real good at setting up traps. So they trapped the pyramid with like explosive arcane grenades and more. And they actually ended up working with this Darius villain to gather these artifacts. Another villain was Yggdrasil. They were an oath-breaking knight. They became actually the most powerful henchman to a blue dragon in the game. It's pretty funny because the knight was actually enamored by the blue dragon, and the blue dragon used that against the knight, the villain. So basically, with the dragon and the knight, they ended up conquering the city's capital, and they had like a floating castle and such. Fighting the last villain was Gardwin, a necromancer writer. Unfortunately, he died in the one-shot, but his work lived on. So the blue dragon I mentioned earlier used Gardwin's knowledge as a necromancer to become a Dracolich in the campaign. So yeah, make your players like super invested in the game, have them help you create villains. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks.